Hello, beautiful strangers, and welcome back to another episode of Crimson Gray. When last we left off, we're just sort of trying to decide what medicine we should give to Lizzie. And, well, I think I know what decision I'm going to make. I think, if I recall, Yondequel helps with violent tendencies, and, well, she does seem to have some violent tendencies. So let's give her some, let's try giving her that. 2 weeks of Yondequel coming up. Try to help her rest, okay? Yeah, okay. Kitten's trying to climb my chair and is failing at it miserably. How cute. Heading outside, John handed the bag to Lizzie. He had pushed pretty hard to get to this point, but he would never force her to take the medication. His father had used to talk like he didn't have a choice about depression medication, practically threatened to force feed him. John refused to do that to anyone else. That is a good thing to do. The more you, especially people that have mental issues, the more you try to force them to do something, the less likely they are to do it. I can attest to that quite well. I'm very bad about that. The more pushy someone is to me about something, the less likely I am going to do it. But Lizzie didn't make an issue out of it at all. Smiling at him, she opened the bag, shook out one of the pills, and swallowed it without even taking a drink. She'd given the label a careful look, though. Okay, I hope you can love me now, John. Lizzie, no, I never meant anything like that. Please don't. That didn't taste bad at all, so we can go on our date now, John, can we? You know, I've known people that can take pills without drinking anything. I can take certain pills without drinking anything. Sudafed being one of them, like the small red Sudafed, because they're tiny, tiny, tiny. And the diphenhydramine pills I normally get, Benadryl pills I normally get, whatever you want to call them, are super small, and I can take those without water, because I can basically swallow them because they are super tiny, like smaller than a Tic Tac tiny. But I've seen people that can take like fucking full-size Tylenol or ibuprofen or like the giant fucking like quarter-sized pills, just down them without any water or anything. It's always impressive to me. He wanted to go back to what she had said, reassure her that he meant nothing wrong by it, but his words stuck in his mouth. Maybe on some level he did mean to force her. Maybe he was repeating everything that had been done to him. But with Lizzie smiling at him like that, he couldn't fall too far into depression. Instead, John smiled back and gestured for her to follow. Without any great ideas, John thought they should go to the park. Their town had a pretty nice park, and it was usually empty this time of day. His friends always said that a movie theater was the best first date, but he suspected they mostly wanted to try to comp a feel. Besides, he was worried Lizzie would end up watching him instead of the movie. In the park, Lizzie happily skipped along the path, often looking back to him, but at least looking at a lot of other things. As he watched, he realized she was definitely more stable than usual. She stayed cheerful and sweet without any threats of violence. Could it really be the Yondequel? With him, that Paxitine had taken weeks to work, and whether or not it actually helped had been really unclear. Then again, Lizzie was her own case. Hi, Morgana. Of course, it took more than medicine to cure a serious condition. He knew that all too well. As Miss Smith has said, therapy was also an important component of recovery. Hers had certainly helped him a lot. The third main component was a social support network, and there he completely failed to take her advice. He still spent most of his time alone or in meaningless old relationships. But hey, now he was walking in a park with a girl his age. Maybe things were looking up. And for once in his life, things went his way. Lizzie was happy to eat fast food for lunch and didn't even try to feed him anything. Afterwards, he was pretty much out of plans, and Lizzie didn't want to stop. Fortunately, she was happy to drag him around town to see random things. In a way, he was grateful for that. It spent all its energy from making decisions during the morning. It was easy to just glide along in her wake. In that way, she was a good match for him. When the sun started setting, John was actually surprised. Had the day really passed by that quickly? He could barely drag himself through a lot of the weekends. This was a welcome change. Holy shit, is that John? With a girl? Hey guys. Morgana, you're being very mewy right now, aren't you? Although, you're usually a fairly mewy cat, you just don't mew a lot during recording. I have no idea how much of that I could catch because I was facing the opposite direction of my mic talking to Kitten. Anyway, is that the crazy chick you told me about? Oh yeah, that's definitely her. Are you that desperate, John? And how much of a sad sack he's been lately, I'm pretty sure he is. Do any of you have girlfriends? Silence is your reply. Huh, you guys talk so much shit. Just leave Lizzie out of it, okay? Oh, fuck you, John. If she wasn't crazy, you could never get a girl as cute as her. She is pretty hot, but I don't get why she's with you. Yeah, this doesn't really make any sense. Oh, John, are you gonna cry? Better not, or she'll realize how pathetic you are. His positive mood was completely gone. He knew she should check to see how Lizzie was taking the mocking, but it was the most he could do not to fall into a mire of self-hatred. As always, he felt like he should be stronger than this, less emotionally fragile, and that just added to his self-hatred. If it had been anyone else, he might have crushed completely, but he knew these guys, and he was at least familiar with their attitude. John pulled himself together and faked a smile at him. Sounds like sour grapes to me. You all have fun with each other, okay? Come on, Lizzie, let's get out of here. They scoffed, but he didn't care. Taking her hand, he walked as fast as he dared out of the alleyway. Man, nice stink face she's giving there. I do like that. I do, I also find, again, more credit to the designer. I think they did a good job with her expressions. I love them a lot. When they were a safe distance away, he finally glanced at Lizzie and shivered. Her eyes were staring intensely at nothing, and she was gnawing on one knuckle. Was there blood running down her finger? Abruptly, she squeezed his hand, then swept both her hands behind her back and smiled at him. That was really sweet of you, John. You're always so nice. Don't let those guys bother you. They say a lot of stuff, and it doesn't mean anything. Is your finger okay? It looked like... I'm okay, John. Don't worry. Well, should we just keep going? Okay. But they hadn't gotten far before John realized he couldn't follow up on that. He had pulled himself together long enough to walk away, but now he had nothing left. It was all too much. He wasn't usually outside and in public this much, and though being with Lizzie wasn't bad, he wasn't stable enough for this much interaction. John, are you okay? I'm tired. I think I need to go home. Is something wrong? Did I do something wrong? He could hear the tremor in her voice, knew she needed affirmation, but the apathy was choking him to death. He had no energy for anyone else, no energy for anything but getting back home, curling up and wishing he was dead. Somehow, he said goodbye, found the bus, and got all the way back home. The events paused like he was suffocating in gauze, the world around him too unreal to have any effect. Maybe he should have reassured Lizzie, but it didn't matter. He was an idiot for thinking it could help her. Nothing he did mattered. What'd you get there? Oh, you're a cat, so I guess you being able to get places that you shouldn't be is sort of like the expectation. Could you get that also? Please? There we go. There you go. Sunday was a miserable slog through every second. John gave up on accomplishing anything whatsoever and just lay in bed feeling worse about himself. Sorry about any random laughs. Kat is being very cute. And she's unsure what she wants to do, but she wants to do something, and it's very cute watching her try to figure that out. He fell asleep early and woke up early in the morning, not feeling better. That was impossible after a day wallowing in himself, but suddenly his energy was back. And he needed it, because he hadn't accomplished anything he needed to do over the weekend. He set to working feverishly on Monday's homework. Kitty. By the time he needed to go to school, his eyes were gritty and his good mood was gone, but he was ready, high functioning. John sighed and headed to school. He was actually shocked to not see Lizzie, not even watching him from a distance. But after that weekend, it would be awkward to hang out with his friends, so he ended up spending most of the day alone. At lunchtime, he decided he might as well go up to the rooftop again, and he found Lizzie already there. Hi, Lizzie. I'm sorry if I was a jerk on Saturday. No, you're not at fault. I am. Wait, part of me is gone now. It was dangerous, but it was part of me. She stood up and looked at him, and he realized that she was standing at the very edge. The last time they had stood there, their positions had been reversed, and he hoped that wasn't a bad omen. All I want is to be with you, John. For us to be together. I would do anything to make that happen. Anything. But I don't think I could hurt someone. Not anymore. It feels so strange. Medication can make you feel strange for a while. You don't like violence, do you? Do you want me to be different? He knew he should answer, but his throat felt so dry and his mind was numb. I'll change myself for you, John. If that's what it takes for us to be together, I'll change however you need me to. Again, gonna try to refrain from commenting on psychological stuff today now. Yeah, squeeze my hand. Yep. I know this doesn't depict any sort of healthy relationship, and you shouldn't take any sort of advice from it, so I'm just going to try to not think about stuff too much, especially with knowledge that I have. Anyway, is there a part of me you don't like? I'll get rid of it. I'll tear it out. I'll cut it away right now. John knew that he needed to say something to reassure her, to stop her from going down that self-destructive path, but he couldn't bring himself to speak. Instead, he stepped forward and embraced her. Lizzie gave a soft grasp and wrapped her arms around her torso, but she was pushing into him, her head nuzzling against his chin. Just stay with me, okay? Please promise me you won't ever leave. He nodded, and she gave a happy squeal, but his mouth was still far too dry to speak. Speaking of dry mouth, I would say tasty, but it's really not. We're gonna. On Tuesday, John and Lizzie ate lunch together as if everything was normal, and in some bizarre way, it really was. Perhaps due to the medication, she seemed so much more stable than before. She was sweet and kind at times, always considerate and affectionate. Yet, there was the occasional moment when she still seemed a little obsessed. To the slightest positive comment from him would be interpreted as a sign of their destined love. But, all in all, John was happier than he had ever been in a long time. His classmates even stopped messing with him about Lizzie, though he wasn't sure if that was because she seemed normal or because they were afraid of her. Yet, he wasn't. Not really. He had a hard time believing that anyone could really love him, yet it seemed that Lizzie truly did. If anything, he worried that he could never love her back that intensely. He had an appointment scheduled with Miss Smith on Wednesday, yet, for once, when he walked into her office, he didn't feel like he desperately needed it. Hold on just a moment. Sorry about that. Ready for your session today, John? Actually, I'm feeling really good. Maybe we should skip today's. You know better than that. If you stop treatment that's making you feel better, you might have another relapse. No, you're right. Sorry. Don't be sorry. Just lie down and take a load off. So how have you been doing lately? Hi, kitty. Well, I'm okay, I guess. That's better than most weeks, so it looks like you're making progress. By the way, I've seen you pass with a girl. Are you two dating? There's some, choices there, that's for sure. Why does my phone have a little... weird. Sorry, I have my timer and flowchart on my phone, and it had a little red speck, like one of the pixels was red. Well, a small group of pixels. It's the pixel density is a little too high to notice a single pixel. Anyway, it's gone. I think it was just like the background picture I have on my lock screen. Anyway, we have a choice here. What do we tell Miss Smith? Do we say yes, we're dating, or maybe something like that? No, we're just friends. No, she's sort of stalking me, or it's complicated. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever choose. It's complicated. What is a bad Facebook post? I wouldn't actually know. I don't have a Facebook account because I refuse. But anyway, not going to go down that rabbit hole. We're going to say, no, she's sort of stalking me. You're speaking casually, right? Stalking is an actual crime, you know. You should report that to the... That's actually not 100% true. That depends heavily on where you live. I think, as a matter of fact, where I live, stalking isn't technically a crime as long as they're not trespassing. Because I remember in high school, somebody was stalking I think it was a guy stalking a girl, and I think there was a completely separate story of a girl stalking another girl, and neither of them ever got in trouble because stalking wasn't technically illegal, and there was nothing that they could, or at least would, do about it. And that was both school and police. And nothing, as far as I know, nothing ever came of it, but I don't know everything. I did not gossip a lot in high school. No, nothing like that. Good, I assumed as much, since it looked like more than that to me. And along those lines, I have to ask, have the two of you been intimate? What? How can you ask that? I'm not teasing you, this is a very serious question. You better not be leading up to giving me a lecture about safe sex or abstinence or anything. So, should I take that as a no? Yes, I mean, no, we haven't done anything like that. It's good to hear that you're at least expressing interest. Koitek got back to me about Erozepam? Sure, and it's still decades from viability, so we don't have a good solid libido option for libido issues. Can't we talk about something else? Anything else? Sorry to make you uncomfortable, John, but I do need to be concerned about your welfare in all respects. To that end, I have one more question. Has the girl ever displayed any strange behaviors, erratic tendencies? Well, we have more choices here. Yes, no, what kind of behavior? What question is that? No. I can't think of anything. She's a little shy, maybe, that's all. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. I'm not being rude, John. This is important, you see. I looked up those girls' records, and to my surprise, I actually knew her mother. You knew Lizzie's mother? Yes, Abby Doss took part in one of our early clinical trials. She was one of the women who had to be removed from the study when we learned they had lied about being pregnant at the time. Plus, I thought she displayed addictive tendencies. I understand she began abusing prescription painkillers later in life too. The poor girl probably had a hard childhood. So anyway, I just hope that girl turned out alright. Any drugs taken while someone is in utero can have permanent long-term impacts, so I'm glad the girl turned out normal. Moving on, you seem to be much better. Assume the issue of emotional grayness took care of itself? Yeah, of course. Miss Smith seemed so positive. couldn't bring himself to tell her the truth. Because despite the general improvements in his life, that aspect of it had not. Lizzie was a single spot of color in his world, but the rest was even grayer than before. The rest of their session passed in a gray blur. When it was over, John was in a strange mood. He felt a little better, but not much. Usually after a therapy session, he floated in an empty tranquility, but now his mind was racing. He impatiently sat through his next class, but his mind was on what Miss Smith had said about Lizzie's mother. Could that be part of the reason for her instability? When he had a free period, John headed straight to the library and tried to look up past incidents. It was hard to find information on Koitek's old trials, but when he eventually gave in and looked at the microfilm, he actually found some relevant articles. He knew that Lizzie had been born in 1972, so he was able to skim back to around the time she had been born. He actually found the birth announcement in no local paper easily, but for the rest, he was left searching aimlessly through shitty local articles. So, if she was born in 1972, I'm going to go ahead and say, just as a generic age, she's probably, I'm going to say 16, which means that this takes place in, 88? Interesting. I feel like I knew that. I feel like I had that exact same thought the first time I read it, but yeah, it's interesting. An interesting time period, one that I like. I've never lived in it. I'm not that old. Not by a good bit, actually, but still. I just have weird nostalgia for like 70s and 80s stuff and early 90s stuff. Yeah, I have nostalgia, not nostalgia, but the term's not nostalgia, but I can't remember what it is. Anyway, I like older stuff. They are interesting, and I liked new stuff because it's interesting. I like stuff. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, this generation is better than this generation or anything like that. I think each age and generation, including from current to old, is interesting. Like music is good in each generation. There's no generation I think has bad music, and so on and so forth. It's just I don't know. I like stuff. I like history, which probably helps a lot in that aspect. But anyway. And then, all at once, it was easy. There was a series of articles that took his research from a boring whim to something that had on the edge of his seat. Apparently, before it was called Koitek, the company had been called PharmaVax. They'd rebranded after a series of drug recalls had ruined their reputation. John sat back, unable to read any further. Was that really the explanation? It felt so cheap. It was easy to presume that Lizzie's mother had been involved in one of the recalled PharmaVax trials, and her unborn child must have suffered the consequences. Could that really have unbalanced Lizzie this way? If so, that meant this was no phase she was going through. If her early development had been altered, she was probably this way for life. Yet, the second emotion he felt was anger. Anger that Miss Smith or anyone else could think Lizzie was just some freak chemical accident. It was too much like the scorn that it had been heaped on him for his depression. Whatever his problems, Lizzie was a person who deserved respect, help, but respect before anything else. Depression quickly followed on the heels of his anger. Unable to deal with any more of those thoughts, John just walked out without even replacing the microfilm. He drifted through the rest of the day, still stewing over what he'd learned. At times, he could almost convince himself that this was a good thing. If drugs had unbalanced Lizzie, maybe they could balance her again. He could almost imagine them together, helping each other, maybe even getting married. When she passed him in the hallway, her eyes lit up, not in mere elation, but with burning intensity. And in that moment, John was sure that Lizzie couldn't be cured. The question was, did he want her to be? I think on that little question of did he want her to be, I think I'm going to end this episode. Well, I hope to see you all next time. Bye.